Hello, I am here to film my April wrap up. I can't believe April has gone already. It's been the strangest month, as you know, we all know this. But luckily I've actually had one of the best reading months that I've had all year. I think strangely, although for a lot of people I know it's gone the other way and everything that's going on has made it really difficult to concentrate and stuff, but strangely for me it's kind of put me in this place where I just want to lose myself in a bubble of reading, and all I'm doing at the weekends really is reading. So I've managed to get quite a lot done. It's still not like, you know, anywhere near as much as I used to read, but those days are, it seems, behind us. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So actually the first book that I've got this month was a real treat for me because I never get books and read them straight away, but Mr. B's in Bath have obviously had to close because of everything going on, so I ordered some books for delivery to sort of support them. And what I did was, I usually just buy books that I've heard of. I bought a few books that were on their recommends page that I hadn't heard of. And the first of these was The Illness Lesson by Claire Beams. I bought this because of the beautiful cover, but also because it just sounded intriguing and I wanted to pick it up as soon as it arrived. So this is a book, basically it's about a girl who lives in quite an isolated situation with her father, and they are visited by these blood red birds, and when they are visited by these blood red birds, it always seems to be an omen for something that's going to happen. So this time, when the blood red birds come, the girl's father decides to open a school for all girls. It's set in 1871, so at that point, you know, education for girls was still quite transformative and new, sadly. And we look at what happens with the girls coming. We find out that our main character's mother has died from what she's been told is epilepsy, but there's kind of strange circumstances behind the death, and it relates to these red birds. And basically the girls coming to the house for their school lessons kind of triggers a series of events that unravels things, and the birds start becoming quite prevalent, and it's almost a gothic-y mystery, ghosty story. I have to say I was really enjoying this for the first half. I was flying through it. I thought the writing was beautiful. I don't know if Claire Beams has written anything else. I think she has, and I would definitely check it out. Yes, she's got a short story collection out, so she has written other things. Her writing is gorgeous, and as I say, I would definitely check more of her out just off the back of that. But sadly, this book entirely failed to come together. The second half was just, I mean, no. As I say, it tries to be a ghost story, but the ghost elements never quite come together. And then it tries to look into how female hysteria was treated, which I actually had to research because I don't know much about how female hysteria was treated, and they don't expressly or explicitly state what's happening. You kind of obviously get an idea, but I did have to research to find out what the treatment was to understand fully what was happening. And then it just kind of comes to an abrupt end and nothing's really solved. We don't really find out what it was that was happening. So yeah, it's a book that entirely fails to come together, but it's also a really beautifully written and really promising book. So it's a book of two halves, definitely. I can't say I would recommend it for that reason, but I did enjoy it and I'm glad that I read it, and as I say, I will definitely be looking out for more Claire Beams. Then I read a reread, which was also, actually, I already had it, but it was also on Mr. B's list of recommendations about books to read, about reaching out to each other and to make us feel better in these uncertain times, and that is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. Now, those of you who have been around from my channel from the very beginning will know that this used to be my all-time favourite book. I used to adore it, and I guess that's because it was the first kind of literary book that I read that I really connected with. It was the first book that focused on really beautiful language and really beautiful ideas and wasn't necessarily plot driven. And I didn't find myself straying from the fact that it didn't necessarily have much plot driving it. So it was quite a formative book in my reading and really pushed me towards the kind of books that I like now. But I was really skeptical about rereading it, because I think especially when you read a book when you were quite young and it really formed your reading experiences, I think going back to read it after you've read more books of that kind can kind of often ruin the first experience, but it definitely didn't with this book. I adored it as much the second time around. So this follows Oscar in the aftermath of his dad dying in 9/11, and Oscar, it's never explicitly stated that he has autism or Asperger's or anything like that, but he's definitely not your usual, I think he's 9. Yes, he's definitely not your usual 9-year-old. He's very mature. He has only relationships with adults, really, and he doesn't fully grasp when something is inappropriate, or when, you know, he's a unique character, let's say. And most of the book is narrated by him, but we also flip to sections which are written by his granddad, who left when his dad was really young, and we also get sections written by his gran. And basically Oscar comes across a vase with a slip in it that says black, and he's sure that it's a clue from his dad, because him and his dad used to play these mystery games where they would leave each other clues. So he finds this vase in his dad's closet, and he thinks that the black is pointing him towards something. So he goes on a mission basically to find out what black means, and in the end he decides that it must be a surname. So he goes to the address book and picks out all the blacks in the city and visits them one by one. Obviously we don't get all of his interactions with the blacks, but some of them we do see, and it's just a really heartwarming and lovely book. It's got such sadness in it, but it's also got such hope, and it's just beautiful. It's beautifully written. The characters are wonderfully formed. I just find so much joy in this book, and it's got really unique bits in it as well. For instance, there are like letters. There's a character who can't speak, so he just writes things down on a piece of paper and reuses them when he runs out of paper. He just picks the one that seems the most relevant. I just love it. I love it. I love Jonathan Safran Foer. He really excites me. I wish he had written more, but yeah, I would recommend this at the moment for giving you all the warm fuzzy feelings. Then I read Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. I have been wanting to read this for a long time, and I think in my head I had hyped it up as one of those books that I was absolutely gonna hands down adore. It was gonna blow me away. I thought it was gonna be in the realm of like Karen Russell and Kelly Link. And it is in that realm, obviously, in terms of the fact that it's kind of a magically short story collection. It wasn't quite, it didn't live up to my expectations, but I don't think that's any reflection on the book at all. So I've actually read a Carmen Maria Machado story before, which is The Husband Stitch, which is the first story in this book, and it's really wonderfully written, but I have to say that is the highlight of the collection for me. I can't really remember any of the other stories as such. Also, I think what doesn't help this collection is that I haven't read short stories in a few years now, which is shocking, because I went through a stage where I absolutely loved short stories, but I've been trying to lean away from them because I've been trying to lean my writing away from them. So that doesn't help, because I think short stories are definitely a learned art. You kind of get into the habit of reading them and enjoying them, which is a habit that I'm very much out of. I will definitely be following Carmen Maria Machado. I think she's definitely an author that intrigues me, and she's one of the few new authors, I suppose, on the scene that does stuff that excites me. But at the same time, yeah, I just didn't overly love this, so it's, you know, it's my fault. I predominantly think it is my fault, and I've got her memoir on the shelf, and I would definitely be picking that up. But yeah, this was sadly not the best for me. Then, now I'm gonna just disclaim this with the fact that this book was not, I mean, it wasn't great, but I adored it at the same time. Weird. So that's Battle Royale by Kushan Takami. It's not very clear on there, to be honest, and it's translated by Yuji Aniki. Now, as I say, I'm going to disclaim this with the fact that there are so many problems with this book. There is just awful sexism throughout. The female characters in this are written so poorly, and to the point where there are even comments like, oh, I'm surprised a girl could do that, or how could a girl be that strong? yeah, problematic. There are also a lot of errors in here. I don't know whether it is the translation or whether it's the actual text. Now, I think it's a bit of a mixture of both. Almost the translation reads as though it's been translated without someone actually proofreading it and saying, yeah, that makes sense. Like, especially in the beginning, there are sentences that just kind of run into nowhere. And yeah, the writing in general isn't the best at all, at all. But this really, really gripped me in a way that a book hasn't gripped me in a long time. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with the story of Battle Royale, especially in the wake of the Hunger Games. So this is a Japanese novel that looks at basically a totalitarian Japan where classes of kids, I think, each year are taken to play these games where basically they have to kill their classmates and the surviving child is the champion. It's never really stated why they have to do this. I think it's just kind of one of those things that the government can, so they do, basically. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. Now, I will say I'm very surprised the Hunger Games got away with what I got away with, because this is incredibly, yeah. I know there was some controversy from Battle Royale fans when the Hunger Games came out, and I thought, okay, there are obvious similarities, kids having to kill each other. This is very much not a kid's novel or a young adult novel. It's very much an adult novel. There are some quite graphic deaths, but aside from the level of graphic that is in there, it's the same story, and it's shocking. Like, there's obviously taking inspiration from something, but this is literally the same story. So there's obviously it's narrated from a male character, slightly different, but he takes up with a girl who has hurt her leg, Hunger Games, and then they become a team and they're trying to work out how they can trick the games. It's so much like Hunger Games. It's ridiculous. I don't know how somebody didn't copyright that shit. Anyway, as I say, I loved this. I was so gripped. I think at first I was worried because there were like 45 characters or something in the class, and I was really worried that it'd be overwhelming trying to keep up with them all, but actually it was surprisingly easy, predominantly because there's only a very small handful of characters who you actually need to follow precisely. A lot of them die quite early on. It's graphic, as I say, the deaths don't shy away from anything. The deaths are definitely graphic, but I would really recommend this. Despite the flaws, I was immersed. I was absolutely immersed. It's a big book and I got through it in about a week, and that wasn't even reading much. I just couldn't put it down once I picked it up. I really, really enjoyed it, strangely. And then I read Sally Rooney's Conversation with Friends. Obviously Normal People, the television series, has come out this week, and I really want to watch that. I think it looks like the kind of programme that I need in my life at the moment, but I haven't read Normal People, and I wanted to read Conversations with Friends first because I have it on my shelf, and because it was her first novel. In hindsight, I probably could have not read it first, but anyway, I did. So I've been really sceptical about this. I know that everybody went crazy about it, and I did buy it because I found it on offer in a shop, and everyone was talking about it, but I've had my doubts. I didn't think that it sounded like the kind of novel that I would enjoy. I didn't think that it sounded like the kind of novel that I would pick up if it hadn't had the hype that it did. I have to say I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. Is it the perfect novel? No. And I think it's difficult because with a novel like this, it's hyper aware of itself, and I think that's intentional, and I think a lot of the stuff that I perhaps didn't like is done intentionally to make a statement. But at the same time, I think there's a very fine line when you're doing that between perhaps making it an unenjoyable or problematic read and making that statement. So I don't know particularly that it was for me, but I did enjoy the reading experience. So this predominantly follows two friends, Frances and Bobby, I think, and they have been in a relationship when they were teenagers, but now they're just really close friends, and they end up getting close with this couple who are studying their poetry that they do together, Melissa and I can't remember the guy's name, but we'll just go with that. And basically Bobby and Melissa end up getting quite close, and Bobby is trying it on with Melissa effectively, and then Frances ends up having this budding relationship with the husband, and they end up having quite a long affair, which is really formative for Frances. The problems that I had with this, I think, I mean, it's really easy to read, it's really conversational, it is really conversational, and you want to know what's going on with these characters, but they're intentionally unpleasant characters. Obviously what they're doing is unpleasant, and Frances kind of doesn't take any responsibility for the fact that she's having an affair with a married man, really. She kind of takes the victim role and thinks that she's all innocent in the situation and puts it all on him, that he's doing wrong. And yeah, all of the characters have their flaws. None of them are 100% likeable, and the lives that they live aren't 100% likeable. It's a very millennial novel, I would say, in that it very much captures like that kind of hipster-esque lifestyle where they're all just not quite taking responsibility and they're all just going with the flow and keeping it cool. And yeah, there are problems with it. I mean, I think predominantly what this book is trying to say, knowing Sally Rooney as a writer, is quite politicised. She looks at class differences. Frances in this novel is repeatedly running out of money, and I think this is what really I didn't like about this novel. Ultimately, what really bugged me about it after I'd finished. Frances is continually running out of money. She doesn't have much money. She hasn't come from this rich background, and the people around her have all come from much richer backgrounds, especially Melissa and the man that she's having an affair with, who shall not be named in this review. He has a lot of money and they live in a very big house, and Frances is forever feeling a little bit inferior to them, and she feels like she can't tell them that she's running out of money. But on the flip side of that, Frances is 21 years old. She has no real ambition to get a career. She's just studying. She doesn't want to get a job. She is doing a trial at one point, but she's just not interested in pursuing it. She has no passion to get a job at all. She's living off an allowance that her dad's giving her, which is intermittent. But she's 21 years old and she's got an allowance. And I think that the point of this book is that she's in a much lower class than the other people. And I mean, I don't know, but when I was 21 years old, I did not have an allowance and I definitely had to have a job. So that bugged me. I think Frances has this privilege that she doesn't even realise. But then maybe that was intentional. That's the thing with this book, you don't quite know. Also, there are some points in here that I found problematic where Frances she makes throwaway comments, and again, this is intentional because of her age and, you know, she doesn't quite take responsibility for her actions. But I found the comments quite problematic. Like, there is a point in this book where she thinks that she might be having a miscarriage. She's not sure, but when these symptoms begin, she thinks that perhaps it could be a miscarriage of a pregnancy that she didn't know about. And she makes a kind of flip comment, something like, oh well, at least that's over and done with, you know. That was really problematic for me because I think miscarriage is such a huge topic, and to kind of brush it under the carpet, even though it's in keeping with the character, I thought that section didn't need to be in there, and it was problematic. And there's also another point in here where she is sleeping with a man who she's gone on a date with, and she's not enjoying the sex. She doesn't really want to be doing it. Her sort of internal monologue, she makes a comment along the lines of, I should probably stop him, but I'm worried that if I tried to stop him, he wouldn't stop, and then it'd become a thing that it doesn't need to become, so I'm just going to let him carry on. And again, I know that's in keeping with the character, and it's something that actually a lot of girls would think, worryingly enough. And so it's not a problem to have it in there as such, but it's the way that it's framed and kind of just brushed over again that kind of didn't sit right with me, and I thought that was a bit but ultimately I did enjoy this. Would I say that I would hype about it as much as everybody else? No, I think I gave it 3 stars in the end. It is a mediocre novel for me, but I did enjoy picking it up, and again I found myself wanting to not put it down. So it was good, it was problematic. I think I will enjoy Normal People more, so I'm still looking forward to getting to that one. But yeah, so those are all the books I read in April. As I say, it was a much better reading month, and I think I just generally felt better about the books that I was picking up and more enjoying them when I did pick them up, which is something that I just haven't had recently. So that's really good. Please let me know down below what you've been reading, and I will see you next time. Bye!